All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of Perspective 254. My name is Agility Kesa. And before we get started, I just want to ask for one small favor, please. Feel free to hit click on that subscribe button at the bottom, and then we'll all be good. We'll be all good. That's all I need, man. That's all I need from you. Nothing more. That one, of course, you gotta watch the show. Anyways, now that we got that out of the way, let's move on. It feels like just yesterday that we all are watching the news, are watching the elections, are placing our bets, and now here we are, 1 year into Dr. Ruto's presidency. To most suffering Kenyans, this now feels like it was 100 years ago, given what has been happening in the country over that 1 year of Ruto's presidency. But hey, that's politics for you, right? Let's dive into the roller coaster that has been the hustler-in-chief's first year in office. Here is a man that came into power with a narrative that resonated with many Kenyans. Dr. Ruto promised us a land of milk and honey. He rebranded himself around his own humble beginnings as a poor street chicken seller, a man who understood the struggles of the average Kenya. Dr. Ruto's hustler branding was actually a masterstroke in political messaging. It connected him with the grassroots and the everyday Kenyan trying to make ends meet. He promised to make life better for the average mwananchi by curbing the skyrocketing cost of living, fighting corruption, depoliticizing the police force, and establishing gender parity in his cabinet. He promised a brighter economic future, improved food production, a commitment to quality infrastructure and education, and a commitment to quality healthcare for everyone. He promised zero tolerance to corruption and a land of prosperity where the youth and the women would thrive. He also promised to reduce taxes. He promised to reduce the cost of living, to bring down national debt, gender balance in the cabinet, reduce the size of the cabinet, etc., etc. It is actually common practice for politicians to pick the most glaring problems in a country and promise to fix them if elected into office. It's a common thing. After all, that's what politics is all about. And that's exactly what Ruto did, because he's a politician. In Kenya and in Africa in general, it is really hard to go wrong with issues that are tightly tied to poverty. Things like education, food, security, infrastructure, and basically just the general standard of living. These are really hot button topics that would typically get everyone's attention if you promised to fix all those things. And that's what Dr. Ruto did. Smart guy. On Dr. Ruto's very first day in office though, Ruto came out swinging with 14 executive orders on the very first day. One of them was actually the swift appointment of 6 judges of the Court of Appeal, the same judges that had been rejected by his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta because of allegations of integrity issues. It felt like he was a man of action who was hell-bent on delivering on his campaign promises. However, as the months rolled on, there was a growing sense that the hustler narrative might be turning into a double-edged sword, and not exactly what we had expected. Based on all the reports that have been dominating the news over the last several days or several weeks, the overriding consensus is it has been a dismal first-year performance for Dr. Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza brigade. They have not done well. As Baba put it the other day, it's been extremely disastrous. To give the devil his dues though, Dr. Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza guys have had a couple of wins over this 1 year. The major one actually being the implementation of the Hustler Fund that he promised us during the campaigns. I actually did a story on that Hustler Fund a couple months ago. So if you want to check it out, just click on the link over here and you can see what my thoughts were on that. Kenyans have been accessing this Hustler Fund since its launch in November of last year. And so far, it is something. On top of the Hustler Fund, they also introduced fertilizer subsidies to enable farmers to buy the input at low prices and therefore enhance their food production. It's a good thing. Ruto announced the reduction of the cost of 50 kilogram bag from 7,000 shillings to 3,005 shillings, and now it is 2,500 shillings, which is a major win for the farmers. Halafu mwisho, and they also started the hiring of additional 30,000 new teachers as of January 1st. Great for education. These are just some of the very, very few wins of Dr. Ruto's administration in its first year. Now, on the other side of the coin is a litany of broken promises. Dr. Ruto promised to slash the government debt and introduce policies that would put money into the pockets of the impoverished mwananchi. However, his first act after taking office in September of last year was actually to cut food and fuel subsidies that had been introduced by his predecessor Uhuru Kenyatta during his reign, saying he preferred subsidizing production instead of subsidizing consumption. And then in June, Ruto introduced new taxes that increased prices for basic goods such as fuel, food, and mobile money transfers, as well as a controversial levy on all taxpayers to fund a housing scheme that nobody cared about. Ruto has insisted that the tax hikes are needed in order to create jobs and fill government coffers, and therefore is over-reliance on external borrowing. The Kenya Kwanza folks in Parliament actually voted to double the value, the VAT on fuel from 8% to 16%. And as a result, the cost of petrol was increased to 211 shillings, diesel to 200, and kerosene to 202 shillings as of right now. Instead of the economic revival that we were promised, what Kenyans got was actually a test of new taxes all over the place. Ruto also decided to scrap the subsidies on unga and petroleum products, substantially increasing the cost of maize flour and pretty much the cost of everything else around. In addition to that, Dr. Ruto also vowed to slam the brakes on public debt after he took over from Uhuru Kenyatta, whom he had accused of overborrowing and burdening this country with external debt. However, he has borrowed the largest amount in a year, as Kenya's external debt now has surpassed 10 trillion shillings. In the financial year ending June, Kenya's gross debt rose by 1.56 trillion shillings to reach 10.19 trillion shillings, up from 8.6 trillion during the same period, 2022. Ruto's administration also vowed to tackle corruption head-on, emphasizing transparency, accountability, and a swift legal action against the perpetrators of the vice. The promise was to create a system where public funds would be safeguarded and any misappropriation would be met with severe consequences. However, in just 100 days after taking office, we saw high-profile corruption cases involving Ruto's close associates mysteriously crumble in the courts of law. Additionally, we have seen several cases of individuals with questionable integrity issues getting appointed into key positions in the same administration. It begs the question, how exactly can you tackle corruption when you are surrounded by the same people, very same folks that are implicated in the corruption? If he truly wants a zero-tolerance corruption movement, if he wants to protect the hustler nation from corruption, then basically he needs to ensure that his inner circle is beyond a reproach. He needs to distance himself from those with tainted reputations. The nickname Zakayo, I'm sure you've heard about, likening Mr. Ruto to the biblical tax collector as Zakayo, isn't just about taxation. It also hints at public sentiment regarding the administration's handling of corruption and corruption issues altogether. For many, the fight against corruption is not just about catching culprits. It's all about creating a transparent system where such activities are deterred from the outset. We are yet to see that happen in this administration. So the fight against corruption, hapo mimi nasema ni zero. Over the past year, petrol prices have also increased 22%, electricity increased by nearly 50%, and household staples like sugar, cooking oil, and unga have also gone up substantially. Affordable housing projects have actually sprung up across the nation in an attempt to fulfill his promise of housing and settlement plan. However, none of these have actually been completed, and until we see one that has actually been fully completed and ready for occupation, this just remains a case of smoking mirrors. We cannot see it because this is Kenya after all. On gender equality and empowerment, President Ruto made a series of commitments that underscore his dedication to ensuring women's rights and representation in Kenya. That's another promise that is yet to see the light of day. And then there is the issue of government appointments and a streamlined cabinet. All these accomplishments and failures have been dissected over and over in the media over the last so many days. So I shall therefore not waste any more of your time by trying to venture further into those. Instead, what I choose to focus on here today is Kenya Kwanza and Dr. Ruto's campaign manifesto during last year's election. Basically, it's a 5-year plan for his first term in office in the event that he won the presidency. He had a plan for that. The plan revolved around 5 central pillars. Here they are. These 5 pillars were further subdivided into smaller workable goals or promises, all amounting to a total of 182 goals. So during the 5 years, they had 182 goals. As they say, the devil is in the details. So let's just take a couple minutes to dig deeper into these 182 promises and see just how well Dr. Ruto has done over the last 1 year to achieve some of these. The promises are supposed to span a 5-year period, but they are categorized into the first 100 days, short-term, medium, and long-term goals. So basically, it's 182 goals to be accomplished in 5 years. We have the first 100 days, and then the short-term goals are those that are supposed to be accomplished within the first year. The medium-term goals are supposed to be accomplished within the first 3 years of his presidency, and then the long-term goals are those that are supposed to be accomplished within the 5-year period. So, since it has only been 1 year, we are looking at Ruto's first year in office. I will focus on only the goals that he promised to accomplish in the first year in office. These first year goals do total 106, including those that were supposed to be accomplished in the first 100 days. So we have a total of 106 promises. Out of the 106 promises that were slated for his first year in office, only 9% have been completed. Not 9%, nine goals, 9 promises. And these 9 are these. Not to downplay the significance of these promises, but several of these are actually very small wins. They're not significant. Most of these just involved signing of executive orders, like for example, the appointment of judges that had been rejected by President Uhuru Kenyatta. All Dr. Ruto had to do in this case was walk into State House, sign an already prepared piece of paper, and boom, promise accomplished. I mean, it is a promise he promised to deliver. He did deliver that by signing a piece of paper. And then we have 16 promises that were broken or dropped completely. And this is the list. Out of these broken promises, a couple of them actually do stand out more than the rest of them. And Kenyans are actually feeling the pinch of these false election or broken election promises. For example, the reduction of fuel prices and to reduce the price of unga. Those are 2 promises that he promised that have been broken. And what has happened in these 2 cases is actually the opposite of what he promised he would do. Not only have the prices not gone down, they've actually gone up, and the Kenyans are hurting as a result. Out of the 106 promises to be completed in the first year, a staggering 47 of them have not even seen the light of day. Hazijaanza, ziko tu. Tuliambiwa tutafanyiwa within the first year hivi, nothing has happened. 34 of those have been initiated, zimeanza, but they are still in the works. Whether or not they'll ever be completed, only God knows. Because, this is Kenya. Na hapa Kenya tujui venye kunaendanga. And then we have 16 that have been dropped, ignored or broken. Hata hawatashughulika nayo, na hakuna kitu mtafanya. And then only nine out of 106 have been fully realized. 9 out of 106. Let that sink in. In my humble opinion, even those 9 promises that they're supposed to have accomplished are basically of no consequence to the common mwananchi, because who cares about the appointment of judges and returning port operations to Mombasa when you cannot afford to put food on the table? Who cares about the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs when you've never stepped foot outside your village of Marachi in Busia your whole life? Hakuna mahali unaenda. So, Ministry of Diaspora Affairs itakusaidia na nini? All that said and done, tukipiga hesabu, looks like the actualization rate of Mr. Ruto's promises is a mere 8.5% in the first year. 8.5%, let that sink in. 8.5% actualization rate. It's funny, it's like you set an exam for yourself. You have the marking scheme and all that, and yet despite that, bado unaanguka. Unapata 8.5%. For an exam that you set for yourself. And as if these promises and lies that he gave to us during the campaigns were not enough, the good Dr. Ruto saw it fit to sprinkle just a few more after he won the election. Because, hey, who cares? I'm sure you're all familiar with the expression, chemi chemi za uongo. It's all over the place. Here we go. Anyways, here's the chemi chemi za uongo that he promised us after he came into office. Take a sample. The most blatant of this, and which I personally think is a slap in the face of all of us, was the one about the stadiums. Because on 1st of September, the president promised to complete all uncompleted stadia in Kenya, highlighting the significance as not only venues of athletics and entertainment, but also as a symbol of national progress and development. Now, I'm not sure if Dr. Ruto is being serious here or he's just fighting with us because he knows he can. But do you remember this video?
In 6 months' time, the stadium in Wote will be complete. In 3 months' time, the stadium in Chuka will be complete. In 3 months' time, the stadium in Moyale will be complete. In 6 months' time, the stadium in Kamarin in West Pokot, which is historic, will be complete.
Yeah. Also remember when Dr. Ruto actually had to backtrack on the 300 shilling cooking gas thing? That was hilarious to watch.
Kwanza mtungi, wacha gas. Ile tunapunguza kati ya shilingi 300 na 500 ni mtungi yenyewe. Ndio sasa uongeze gas ndani yake.
Anyways. So while Dr. Ruto's domestic reputation might be taking a hit, internationally, it's a whole different ballgame for him because as people struggle with skyrocketing price of food and other basic commodities in Kenya, Ruto has been busy on the international stage trying to cultivate an image as a global leader and a trendsetter. You know, remember just the other day when he hosted the African Climate Summit? Well, Ruto did not just attend. He did attend, but he drove there himself in an electric car. You know, talk about making a statement. And he did make a statement right there. It's evident that Ruto is trying to carve out a niche for himself as a global leader, a dependable ally, especially to Western nations. But when these are juxtaposed against the backdrop of rising inflation, taxes, civil unrest at home, it paints a picture of a leader caught between two worlds. International acclaim does not always translate to domestic approval, and that is something that he needs to know. So, as we reflect on this past year, it is evident that Dr. Ruto's presidency has been a mixed bag of ambitious promises, some realized and others, well, let's just say, they're still to be determined. And while the allure of electric cars and international diplomacy might make headlines for him, it is the bread and butter issues, the promises that he made to the average Kenyan, to the average Mwananchi, that actually truly matter. So, as we've seen time and again, politics is as much about perceptions as it is about policy. And as Dr. Ruto's presidency moves on to its second year, we wait with bated breath to see exactly what the hustler-in-chief has in store for us for the second year. And with that, thank you so much for joining me for the show. It's been a pleasure. Until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and have a wonderful day. Cheers.